On the 7th Special Operations Squadron of the US Air Force, the Bell-Boeing CV-22B Osprey.
Yeah, that first pass is at 250 knots, so almost twice the speed as most of the helicopters you'll see here today.
And the engines, a pair of Rolls-Royce Allison A1107C turbo shafts, and they are turning rotors of a diameter of 25.7 meters. That's nearly 85 feet. Sorry, my apologies. The rotor diameter is 11.6 meters, which is about 38 feet. What I gave you is the width with the rotors turning, because, of course, we'll see that demonstrated very, very shortly as the aircraft manoeuvres through its profile. The initial plans called for V-22s to equip all 4 of the US Armed Services. This is an aircraft that made its maiden flight in March 1989. It took until 2000 for it to enter service, initially with the US Marine Corps with the MV-22B variant. That was followed by the CV-22B that we see here for the US Air Force. But it's a type that really has spread its wings in terms of its range of roles over the years since.
What a fantastic sight as those engines start to rotate. You see it now transition from wing-borne flight into rotor-borne flight. Aircraft decelerating from 250 knots to around about 80 knots at the moment, and ultimately to the hopper.
One of these airplanes can transport 24 combat troops. Cargo loads, 20,000 pounds internal, up to 15,000 pounds external, so underslung, and of course it's capable of being air-to-air refueled. The US Air Force uses the Osprey to perform long-range missions in support of US Special Operations Command. They infiltrate forces into hostile zones, resupply them while they're there on the ground, and then exfiltrate them at the end of the mission. With air-to-air refueling from Lockheed Martin MC-130 Hercules tankers, one of these Ospreys can have a range in the area of 2,000 nautical miles and up to 5 hours endurance. So a rolling takeoff now from the Osprey. That tactical takeoff performed by aligning the aircraft, of course, into the prevailing wind and with 80 degrees set on those 2 huge engine nacelles. The US Air Force CV-22Bs can carry a .50 caliber machine gun on their rear ramp. They've also got hoist and fast roping equipment. Forces can deploy either by those methods or by jumping off the Osprey's rear ramp, which we saw open at least on the initial pass. Also a very useful machine with which to perform medical evacuation duties in theatre.
Yeah, and of course the big advantage of this aircraft is the ability to accelerate and get a casualty to a hospital within what we call the golden hour. So quite critical in places like Afghanistan, where the medical facilities are few and far between.
The 7th Special Operations Squadron that operates this aircraft, part of the 352nd Special Operations Wing, the only unit permanently stationed in Europe to operate the Osprey, and it's resurrected the 352nd's vertical lift capabilities since the retirement of its long-serving Sikorsky MH-53 Pavlo helicopters. The squadron has 10 of these on strength. It's a very versatile aircraft for the special operations role. The tilt-rotor configuration, as we've been saying, gives it a wide speed range and better high-altitude capabilities than the likes of the MH-53s that it replaced. The US Air Force is looking at adding further armament to its Ospreys and has a requirement in that regard to equip them with a forward-firing gun. And all of that activity, plus that being looked at by the US Marine Corps in relation to its Ospreys, very much in line with the current vogue and necessity for multi-role and swing-role platforms in theatres. The manufacturer is looking at anti-submarine warfare and gunship versions of the Osprey. It's tested rocket and missile armament on these aircraft. US Marine Corps MV-22s are going to gain an air-to-air refueling capability of their own, becoming tankers themselves. Very versatile multi-role platform, and we're really only seeing the start.
I think the air-to-air refueling ability of that, I think, is quite an exciting prospect. It's something that we used to do with the Royal Navy many years ago in the buddy-buddy system of buccaneers tanking other buccaneers, and the idea of it is that you have an organic capability that you don't have to rely on external sources for, which gives you a real force multiplication.
And yet another role performed by the Osprey, and it's one you may well have seen in the media, is as part of the US Marine Corps Presidential Transport Fleet. Because the Marines Presidential Transport Squadron, HMX-1, has a fleet of Ospreys to carry support personnel and the media. And also 44 of them are now being procured as so-called carrier onboard delivery platforms by the US Navy to replace the venerable C-2 Greyhound in that role, helping keep the Navy's flat tops supplied. The Osprey has also achieved its first export success with 5